Hello and welcome to the second part of the morning. We have all the speakers here. Javier, very well accompanied by the rest of them. The coffee break was a bit longer than proposed, and I'd like to encourage you all to stand up with all your staff and come a bit closer. They don't bite. Well, some of them bite, but they're under control. So maybe you could get a bit closer to have a slightly more intimate session. We're going to talk about innovation through social media. Javier Barrera, journalist from Ideal Journal in Granada. Well, good morning. Thank you very much for having invited us to be here. Those of you who are downloading video games up there, you can come here. We don't bite, well, except for Cesar and Jorge. If you have any question, you can ask it anytime, because we really want to have a kind of a debate. In Twitter, we have two labels, Spark 13, and the other one for this meeting, SMCom, Social Media Com. Here to my right, we have Javier Pedreira. Hello. Good morning. Can we hear you properly? Well, I can hear you properly. What about me? We can hear him properly. I jump to José Antonio Perez. Okay. Yes, technical problems. When you say I have a problem with the leg of my table, yeah, sometimes I have sound problems, yeah. Well, Wicho has a blog with other two friends, Microsiervos, one of the best known in Spain. It's devoted to science, but they make it very interesting. Maybe you can ask Jose how he's got more than 120,000 followers in Twitter. Cesar, the social networks, he was very famous with @NetoRaton as a Spartacus. It's going to chase him all his life, and he's doing very interesting things with social networks, political and entrepreneurial strategies. Antonio, we studied together in Bilbao a very long time ago, and he's doing very interesting things with the social networks. He's got a company, Sidil Branch, and it works with, for example, in San Sebastian with gastronomic events, and maybe you can ask him how he can make it so dynamic, so that they can become the leaders in Spain. And he's selling in the last millennium. He's saying he was selling tomatoes on the internet, and he's developed a how-to of electronic bridges, and we say, Agustín Martínez, thank you for being here. Izaskun, she's not 13 years old yet. 13 years old yet, and she's working very eagerly, and it's incredible to see that her battery, the mobile phone battery, is always on. Sonia, Vice Dean of the Specialist School of Andalusia. She represents the university. She works with students every day in audiovisual topics. And then we have Paco from Chile. He can tell you how to turn social network into votes. Can't you? You didn't hear me? Okay, let's go on. If I ask you again, will you listen to me? You're an expert in translating the use of social networks to translate it into votes, and you can tell us more or less what you did in Chile. Well, in Chile, I was in charge of the elections campaign, digital campaign, for the current Republic president, and I was the advisor for the president. That was a specific post. Digital advisor, something that didn't exist before, and it was against it was innovation from the traditional newspaper and journalism means, and that was all thanks to the new ways and the new uses of the digital media. Can you hear them from there? Because I can't hear them. No, they can't hear me either. Okay, maybe we have to be careful with the vocabulary used. Okay, thank you, Pablo. This is the meeting we organized 15 days ago. This is like the second round, and we were speaking for an hour and a half, and we saw three things in the topic of telecenters, and we were focusing on this today and tomorrow. Outside telecenters, there is a lack of knowledge on what's being done within, and the second matter was how they have managed to use the social networks to make their own projects more visible, and how we can use that with telecenters. And thirdly, we can maybe mention the topic of financing. And in these 2 weeks, from the first meeting and the second meeting, what have you learned from telecenters? That would be the first question. Well, first of all, I had to discover that in Galicia we had telecenters because, well, I knew about Guadalinfo, because it's got a name in Spain, but I had to check whether there was a telecenter network in Galicia for technological use. And, well, they're very happy to have met each other, but the problem is the same problem that some of us have. The idea that what happens on the internet is what happens in the world, and it seems like that's not so. I have the impression that with telecenters, it's the same. They know very well what's happening, but they don't reach everybody. So maybe they have to find a way to contact other people, to have access to other people. It's similar to what happens at schools with technology. A typical decision of, for example, buying thousands of computers for all schools. This gives a couple of headlines. You have the typical picture on newspapers, but how and who is going to teach teachers how to make the most of those of that equipment? So it's a question of what for. Maybe that's why that's the new path, the new line of action of telecenters, to explain people what they can do for them. Can you hear me? Yes? Okay. 2 weeks ago, when I was invited to talk about telecenters, I didn't quite know what they were, and I talked about them virtually without knowing what they were, and I commented with some people, and I discovered that in Euskadi we have some telecenters, and he knows about them better than me, and in fact there's one quite close to where I live, in Bilbao, and I asked people, and I agree with Richard, most of the people didn't know what telecenters were. But something more worrying happened to me. I work on TV, and I talk to people, TV program directors, and I didn't know what telecenters were. It's a very significant piece of data, because these are the means, these people are the ones who reach the greatest amount of people. And that's what he was saying. If we don't reach wide or big sectors, like, for example, the elderly, rural areas, inhabitants, etc., there, television is a very important means of communication, but in those same areas, they have no access to those telecenters. So maybe a good way would be to reach these people on the mass media, television, radio, etc., for them to communicate the information and to talk about these telecenters. What have you learned in these 2 weeks about telecenters? Okay, I got here and I got to that meeting with a very limited idea of what telecenters were. I saw them as a public place where people would connect to the internet. And yes, it's that. But apart from that, in these few weeks, what I've learned is that, to start with, telecenters are, from my point of view, a cohesion element, a social cohesion element. In a country like Spain, in which the rural areas have tragically been forgotten for many years, in a country in which the latest 3 governments have been able to organize a connectivity revolution, this has got reduced to cities. So in the villages, in rural Galicia, rural Andalusia, rural Extremadura, there are many people who don't have the same right to connect than people in the cities. And we have the two digital gaps here. So from that point of view, they are a very interesting social cohesion element. But I've learned something else. And it's that apart from allowing people to connect to the internet, high-quality connection, telecenters are also the seed for social innovation. This very famous concept, which is going to be very much repeated throughout today and tomorrow, that social innovation is taking place, and it's taking place for real. Juan Francisco, he's just arrived, and he was telling us about some of the projects which were being created in Andalusian telecenters, which, apart from giving people this universal right to connect, they're managing to have also people in this crisis moment, people being able to implement their own projects and ideas which are positively affecting their communities. So that's mainly what I've learned. Okay. Well, first of all, I don't know why we have to focus the concept telecenter on the rural area. It's got some problems as well. No. Okay. Why do we have to focus on the rural areas? In urban areas, we also have connectivity problems, but I'd like to go further beyond this. What I've learned in these 2 weeks, if I've learned something, because I've been ill, I've had a terrible flu, but this step, this innovation, social innovation step, is not being given, and it's not being taken, and that's maybe what happens. And we'll talk about how to promote and how to make these telecenters more reachable. But I think that so far, telecenters are a space where the tools are given, but maybe not knowing exactly how to use them. And there is something else I've learned. I come from San Sebastián, and I've learned that telecenters are starting to have financial problems. And it seems like in Euskadi there's been a reduction of budget of 50%. That affects services, dynamizers. This could be negative, but it could also be seen as something positive. Maybe we have to start looking for that famous ROI, which is looked for everywhere. This opportunity to look for projects which give this feedback to telecenters. Well, I haven't thought about anything in these 2 weeks because I've had just a little time to know about telecenters reality in Almería. Almería, for those of you who don't belong to this area, is the province which is right close to here, and there are problems with connectivity, transport, and also Wi-Fi and internet, because of the geographical characteristics and also the same cable installation or networks installation. We had very good mobile Wi-Fi, and participating in some initiatives, training initiatives to precisely for proto-entrepreneurs. So they were saying, let's generate ideas for all those who are unemployed here in Almería. We have a 37% unemployment in Almería. It's just a terrible piece of data. We have used Guadalinfo. That's how we actually know about telecenters, and we have developed some training projects. And one thing that caught my eye is the knowledge that within the municipalities there is about the center. This coincides with the fact that these centers are within social centers, for example, libraries, councils. But also something which got my attention is the role of dynamizers. So the people who make it more dynamic. And I think that's where we have to insist, because the level, the highest level of each telecenter, it's the same level as the level of this person trying to make it more dynamic. I've seen loads of motivation. I've seen loads of people willing to research, even if they didn't know a lot about technology. So I thought that was very interesting. And there's also people who approach these telecenters and and they can see that whether they don't that this is not good for them, and they can look for another way to get what they want. And this part was quite interesting. I think they were very much involved, and of course I think that we have to keep on working on that part, on that field. But we can talk about that later on. The first time I heard about telecenters was many years ago, when my best friend from La Castola opened her first email account. And I didn't know what it was, but with the time, and most of all in the last few weeks, I'm starting to discover that there are many very interesting things which are being done, and I'm surprised that right now, precisely when we have to promote education, and at a moment in which we need tools to generate other jobs, we are having the budget reduced and resources are limited to be able to do that. So I think that I would have done it maybe in a different way. Well, we've talked about many of the ideas that we've been talking about in these few days. There's something which is quite interesting for me. I was thinking, well, for example, we've been in several events in Cáceres, and we were talking about this digital gap, and I don't know whether that it's still existing, but I think it's even bigger. And when you talk about the different kinds of situations, crisis situations, economic crisis, the withdrawal of funding, but there is something else that maybe we're leaving aside in this whole mess. And yesterday, we had a report from Vive Internet, and they were saying that young people were going further from some networks, and they're getting closer to other networks like Twitter, etc. So this is very much related to what Antxon was saying. The important thing is for what? In these last few years, we've been talking about this digital development, and yesterday I was talking to Paco Olivares. We were saying that maybe we're mistaken. We are the ones who haven't been living with these tools, and we have started to use this tool, and we have tried to adapt them to our needs, and we have started to use them. And these new generations see that there is established system with tools they use, but I'm sure that most of you who have contact with younger people, you see young people saying, and what is this for? And this is no good for me, etc. And we talk about older people as well. For them, we have to find a why and for what. A couple of weeks ago, we were saying that it's not only about showing the tools, but showing that there are tools. So sometimes they don't have the need because they don't know they have the possibility. And I think this is very interesting and very important. Yeah, well, digital natives don't exist. Well, what were we? We were digital tourists? Or, yeah, I think that we're all digital immigrants. Seems like people coming from out of space. This was Luis Alfonso, I'm sure. It's a common friend. I've been saying for a long time that digital natives don't exist, and we all have to continue learning, because we have new applications and new things on the internet or wherever else. We can't hear you. I can hear myself 4 times. This is very peculiar. Well, that's it. We have to have this ongoing learning. And this thing that whether digital natives exist or not, this is very harmful, because we assume what there is, and people don't really know what they can use these tools for, and they just can't. We can't make them leave 20 or other areas that they can actually manage and use. So it's important to exhibit these new technologies and to tell them how and what for they can include them in their daily lives. Well, I think by the experience of the telecenters, I'm thinking about it from the Latin American perspective. What the challenge in our countries is, because our reality is quite different, the need for infrastructure. It's a challenge of knowing how we can give this access to internet to the citizens. So this connectivity, this access to networks, understanding is something which promotes growth and development of people. And of course, I would say that there are countries in which internet access is forbidden in a way, and also government measures taken from the area of the public, and also how we can address and generate content on this field of infrastructure. So establishing networks or creating a digital citizenship in these big telecenter networks to understand how this can help people find new skills, or how it can help them generate new content. And of course, this is what I've seen in the telecenters, understanding the access guarantee. The guarantee to access is essential, and maybe we should have it as a human right. And this network makes it easier, and they invite people to fight for this connectivity. Okay, well, we have different, very diverse concepts. We talk about the seeds for social innovation, the matter, and also the need to avoid the difference between rural and urban. There we should have this park for innovation, and we have to translate it as well. And what if you break the organization into pieces? We talk about telecenter dynamizers. Can you turn the light on? Can you raise your hand?
Unos cuantos, ¿verdad? Bien.
There are several of you. Can you come? Can both of you, two of you come here, please? Yes, you two, that's fine. Can you come up? Please? Let's move this.
Podrías haber elegido a alguien de los bordes porque...
Les dejo yo el micrófono, no te preocupes.
I will... I can lend them my microphone. Do we need a hand microphone?
No me cerréis el micro que voy a hacer...
¿Cómo te llamas?
I need the microphone. What's your name? Marta. Okay, I can even lend you my chair if you want. Okay, that's for you to share. Can you please sit here? Or you can stay here, it doesn't matter. Well, they are dynamizers of telecenters. We didn't know them before, and this is not a magical trick. So what do people go to telecenters for? So what for? Well, they come to the telecenter for us to solve their lives. Well, thousands of lives. For example, to print a very simple invoice, or to have help with their finances documentation, or for literacy, technological literacy. How many hours? What is the average? How many hours do they spend in the telecenter? Well, this is it depends on the people, but we have a wide range of people, wide range of possibilities. I come from Jaén. Okay, let's go to her. I'm from Leiduela. And what do people go to your telecenter for? Well, as Jordi says, to do many things. To print, to develop a project. What is the average age? Well, the average would be, is it old people or young people? We started with older people, and now we have more young people. Young people also need to develop their capacities. And as you were saying, here we have the seats for the different kinds of possibilities. Do people come back? We started with older people, social exclusion people, and we have a very long and wide trajectory. We are having more and younger people, and these young people in the cities and the rural areas, they need to develop, and they need to. We are some kind of a door, an open door for those needs, and we're like starting point for them. Okay, wait, just a second. We have a question. Stand up. Are you connected to other associations and companies? Yes, we interact with the active forces. And what kind of response do you get? A very good one. A very good one. I have another question. The other day, we were commenting on the fact that, in a way, telecenters worked, and we thought this was a very good idea, as associative centers further from internet. It was a kind of a melting pot, and people went there to debate on different issues, to ask questions, to have some advice. Sometimes it's very personal matters. Sex? Well, well, I don't have my lawyer's not here, so I can't answer that question. But yeah, all kinds of matters. What is your motivation to be in those telecenters? Well, you have to have your vocation, service vocation, service to the city, because otherwise it's impossible. Very good. I think that telecenters are also a place in which people come to talk because they have different kinds of problems. They're unemployed, or the companies are struggling to reach their objectives. Well, I can give you an example. The other day, there was a lady who has gone to the countryside to live. She's a biologist. She likes ecological agriculture, and we were able to create ecological agriculture workshop. And I told her about how to promote her own work on the internet. So people just need to develop their own lives, and we are the means for that as well sometimes. With the crisis, we have people who, for example, don't have an internet connection at home, and they look for the way of being connected because they just can't pay for it. Yes, people need a change, and we can offer somehow that change to them through the telecenters. Thank you very much. Oh, there's another question. I'd like to know how you're organized and whether when you have people coming to ask you some doubts, whether you share time with them to see as well if they have other needs apart from the ones that they think they have or not. Well, we also work with other networks, with ADR, with CAD, with the councils, with city councils. We have to establish some connection points, and also we have to be connected to the public administration and the private sector as well. We have been working on this for 8 years, so we have we have experience in this, and we can detect other needs, and we work as part of a network. Yes. Do you have stories of people who have met through telecenters and who have a radical life change? Maybe they have started a project and this led to another one, etc. Well, this morning they were presenting the notes, sir, and also social networks, YouTube. We've had singers coming from these social networks, and why not? Why not through telecenters? Why not through Guadalinfo social network? If we lend them loads of tools. I have a very recent example. I have a user, and she had a dream. She had always been part of the show business, and she wanted to organize a kind of a casting, a local one. And I said, but for what? This is maybe a bit complicated, a village of 2,500 inhabitants. So I said to her, well, maybe we can do it at a provincial level, because the idea was very good. It was organized in a contest looking for talents, like kind of a talent show. So we started to organize it, articulate it, and we gave it a lot of publicity through the social networks for the whole of the province. We had 45 inscriptions. We called it The Voice of Guadalquivir. And in fact, we've had, well, a lot of work. There was a semi-final. There were some preliminary castings, but this woman, this lady, is very happy now. So she had a dream, and you help her to make it true. Yes, we made a great effort. We learned all the knowledge we had. We had to solve some financial issues as well. But this is a very clear and recent example. And I'm talking about something that happened 15 days ago. And we've helped this woman, this lady, to make her dream come true. And life for her has changed completely. And you were saying as well that some of you have been working with telecenters for 8 years. What needs were there 80 years ago, and what needs are there now? Are there many differences between then and now, or are the needs quite similar? We couldn't hear you very well. We were saying that many of you have been working for 8 years. We wanted to know whether there is a big difference between the needs they had 8 years ago and their needs now. Well, yes, there are many differences, and one of the differences is our own training. We have our experience, and we have more greater knowledge, and we can face some challenges that we couldn't face before. We are within this social innovation process. What do they ask you for? Well, now we're better positioned at the local level. We are referent in each village, and they bring with projects. And where we cannot do anything, we have our colleagues and we have our teamwork, which is very important. We are developing a very important work in all areas.
La última ya. Ya que antes,
a ver. And now the last one. I'm not to blame, but are you getting cuts in your task, in your work as well? There are people screaming yes. Well, not too big cuts. And what about you? They are. Then you get more money than I do then. No, not that much. No, I haven't noticed those cuts, no. I have been sent a petition not to close telecenters through the Twitter in this event. A change.org petition. The ones in the Basque country. As far as we know, the Basque country has experienced strong cuts in this regard, but not in Andalusia. Anybody from the Basque centers? Yes? The CAPI centers have some kind of problems with financing and funding. Well, let's continue then. Okay, they are the protagonists and they had the floor. Thank you.
César, ¿te vas a estar quieto?
No.
Vale, me alegro. Debo decir que me ha chivado.
I have been told that Spark 13 is a trending topic, a tremendous trending topic in Spain. I think that there's a way to make telecenters more visible, such as some still a center in some small village in Granada. Or maybe the journalists will say a cyber cafe. So how would you think about dynamizing this, using social networks on your experience to make telecenters more visible, to find this link, this spark, to make them education centers, generating centers, making those things visible? a journalist was saying that they have a press release that there has been a new center in Virtules, a small village in Granada. So it is not a big piece of news. So what we would have to tell is those things in particular. What we were told, what is being done, what projects are being carried out, what are the needs, how to humanize telecenters. This is what creates an interest from the journalist perspective. What can we give these centers and what can we achieve? Precisely because maybe they thought that telecenter would be a place to look for something in particular. For instance, I was speaking to the telecenter.org executive, Raimilla, and he said that Guadalinfo is a strong power in Twitter. They have the spark for social networks. So the question is, how can we use this tool? I think it would be interesting to see it as a political organization. Look for affinities, so that some centers are like community managers. What the network gives us is the fact that we can join by affinities and may look for people to have grassroots things that can be organized, or political campaigns like Obama's one. People who like having coffee at noon, or people that want to join for whatever. So now that we have the infrastructure, we have the power, we have the network, then with these sparks, with a figure such as a community manager or somebody who may gather information, would be relevant and would provide further value to it. When you mean visibility, you mean visibility in the media. I think that telecenters are quite visible in the communities where they are, and for the customers they need them. In that sense, my experience is that they are very visible. It is obvious what they do. This visibility shall be translated then, for example, in people who have the power, the financial power, the economic power. How do you do that? Well, I will be the first one to advocate for social networks, but maybe they are not the right tool to use here. A social network may be for somebody who can provide things in the telecenter, to have a new workshop, etc. But when it comes to looking for people to train them, social networks are not the right place to look for. People that want to join a telecenter are not going to be in the social network looking for it. When I spoke to the media, I was asked to disseminate Felix Baumgartner's jump from the stratosphere in Red Bull. Okay. Social networks are probably not the right place to give information about what you do, because people who can take advantage or use what is offered through telecenters is not in the social networks. I was telling the story about Red Bull that asked me to disseminate and broadcast the jump by Felix Baumgartner in the stratosphere. I have hardly been stopped in the middle of the street to tell me, oh, I know who you are, I read you, etc. In the 2 or 3 weeks later, in a small channel like is Telesport, plenty of people knew me because I was broadcasting Felix Baumgartner's jump. So that people know that these telecenters are important. So when dealing with politicians, journalists, etc., internet is very far away from plenty of people, whether we like it or not. There's a paradigmatic example in this regard. about what you said. When politicians, people such as Pepe Blanco, Rubalcaba, started going to Saturday night programs, primetime programs. So there was some debate about why they were going to this type of programs, and the obvious response was to become more visible. Visibility given by these programs is essential, not because of the massive audience, but because of the power they provide. You have power with regard to the administration, etc. Jordi Évole is the proof. When nobody was watching him, he was not important. When he has 6 million viewers, he generates covers in El País newspaper. This is a way to provide visibility. The thing is, how can you generate this massive audience for something as specialized as telecenters? They are very important, very specialized. How would I do it myself? I would start talking less about telecenters and speaking more about human stories. Projects that have been started by telecenters, projects that did not make it, even though they were coming from telecenters. I would speak about the heroes in the telecenters. And I would speak less about technical aspects of telecenters, and I would specialize some people to maintain that type of discourse. But we have to specify who are the mediators in each area. And I would like to have conversations with them, but from the human perspective, from the human touch. Advertising, and he knows that very well, has moved from broadcasting brands to try to move us with stories. That's why the Democrat Party convention was paradigmatic. Obama apparently was not running for the re-election, but rather he was giving stories about 5 US heroes that managed to achieve their goals in those 4 years of government in office. So what are the 5 heroes of the telecenter network in Spain? So let's bring them here. Let's make them tell us what happened with them. And in this way, we will be able to disseminate telecenters outside our environment, but they will become an important landmark in several grounds.
Primer aplauso. Bien, bien.
Yo voy más allá. Yo creo que lo que hace falta es...
I believe that we should look for a project that would join the network of telecenters. Guadalinfo needs its own Guggenheim. The thing that everybody will know and that will make it important for telecenters. What I know about Guadalinfo, etc., the good thing is that they are very local. They are very much connected to the local environment. So I believe that thinking about it, why not generating an e-commerce project based on local producers? These local producers may be connected through networks of telecenters. I even think that telecenters may be places to gather the products. To sell these products in networks, you need people that take pictures, that tell stories. If you generate a project on a network of telecenters, in the end, the media, the politicians, etc., will know this. This is the element that is a reference point and an important element. A landmark, yes. Indeed. I'm very skeptical regarding these aspects. Well, I just said that out of the blue. No, I understand what you mean. Finding of telecenters is very important. Motivation of those who pay in the end is important. So long-term projects are difficult to. It is difficult to make them successful. I always try to speak more about businesses and companies, but I think we should make it profitable. We should change our mindset into profitability. It is something like, let us get the cloud in 70, something that we can actually attain. Or let's valorize endogenous culture. Habla is not the page rank that it has. It is born by Paco Fernandez, motivating and generating sentences, but it starts from underneath. But there's something which is very important. Not only bringing tools closer. Tools are not the end, but the means. But telecenters have to face a challenge in 2-3 years' time, which is enormous. 66% of smartphone penetration in the population, so you're not going to need a telecenter to have access to the internet. The thing is, how can we have a telecenter without a telecenter? So what we have to manage is to involve investors, experts, but not big investors, small investors, who are looking for small ideas in small places but need an entrepreneurial prism to achieve it. So if you get 1 out of 90 people going there, you are successful, and this is important. I do insist upon it. We are very much more trained. We know that they know more about psychology than they knew a few years ago. So I would work a lot in this figure. The problem is not that you cannot have access to the internet when you have the tools, is that you cannot handle Excel. But in the end, the problem is there, yes. I also agree with Sonia that from the point of view of communication, it's much more interesting to know who's behind the telecenters than knowing whether there are 3 more computers that are brand new. So when communicating through social networks, the main thing is to know who's the goal. Who do we have to address? I think that the final goal of all the communication is the user that will come close to the telecenter. That will come to the telecenter. We have to reach those users through social networks, but probably these may be useful to reach journalists. That could be part of the communication pathway towards the final user. They can help identify journalists and experts so that they can be told stories of the telecenters that may help us with that. I think I have answered the question already. Next question. We have 6 minutes, and we're going to start by Pablo. If you were Guadalinfo, what would you do? If you were a Guadalinfo center, what would you do? This very evening, or after lunch, what would you do? So let us think about practical things. What would you do? Well, what I would do is to try and generate content, generating meaning, and moving from a network that was providing service to the citizen to being a place for gathering of contacts, something like that. I think that if we take that to the most practical aspect, the best thing working in the internet is videos, obvious. Short videos telling the story about certain people and moving them around with a community manager or somebody who would move the social networks and who would know how to make those contents reach traditional networks, etc. It is also very important to carry out this diagnosis of needs. It is not the same to have the needs of some of a village from Granada or Saint Sebastian. Maybe they are generally similar, but it is not the same thing to have an agricultural or farming business than one on selling curtains, for instance. So these products that are already there being operative, we can have these short videos that could be useful. This is more practical, yes. As Sonia was speaking, I thought that maybe the role of people in telecenters every day maybe it is not even necessary to be the ones that train. Maybe these people are capable to connect them with other people generating content. Maybe this is enough. What would you do this evening then? What was the question? If you had to develop a Guadalinfo Center in Rodalquilar in just a few seconds. No, I don't want to insist on the same thing. I would start having two profitability goals, one a social one and the other one a money one. How would I manage to go on when Europe or the regional government says there's no more money? What will happen? Because I think we should have this type of forum. I think that losing the machine is not the problem. The problem is losing the connection amongst the various people. So what I've seen is people that are very happy. That are people that are very happy. So I would have two goals in the short term. Who would be the ones developing them? And I would try to have a plan with them in a 6 month term, 8 month term, etc. And this indeed is an engine in itself, because you start seeing how other blocks come and join you. And then, of course, I would try to distinguish between the various things. Not everybody is valid for everything. I would have several goals, a social communication goal, an entrepreneurial goal, etc. It doesn't necessarily have to be e-commerce. It could be a different type of knowledge or activity. Thank you, Antxon. I would start by doing what we normally forget, giving value to the domestic network. If there are people doing valuable things, we should empower them. We should give them tools, because the external social network will come through them. I didn't understand the question very well. What was the question? I will repeat it, no problem. If you had to work this very afternoon or evening, dynamizing a telecenter. Dynamizing a telecenter this very evening. Okay. Dynamizing, okay. I will look for a Guadalinfo dynamizer. They know very well what they have to do, because they're doing it every day. It is necessary to start not only thinking about how would you do it today. It is important to think, what do we have ahead of us? And what we have ahead of us is administrations, public administrations with an increasingly smaller budget. We have a tremendous crisis, which is not only an economic crisis, it's a political crisis that has a lot to do with many stories that are being told. We have spoken a lot about the digital divide, but we have a very important one, much more important one, which is the complexity divide. Those of us who come from understanding societies from many years ago, before 2000, vertical, hierarchized societies, where the citizens knew very well how to achieve things, because civil society knew how to operate. But it is becoming increasingly more complex. The communication lines, integration lines are not vertical anymore. So I would turn it around and I would start thinking about the new role of telecenters in those societies, which are complex, and this is going to make everything more complex. So let us not think about telecenters today. Let us think about telecenters tomorrow. What is the role that they're going to have to play in training citizens that are active, participatory, and critical? And all this in just one evening. Amazing. If you had a month, I don't know what I would do in one evening. Probably calling the people that hired me and telling him or her that it was a mistake. I think none of us would accept what these proposals are, because these things took 7 or 8 years to do. If I myself this evening had to enter a telecenter, the only thing I am ready to do, and you know that I'm not very good with computers, is making a few calls. I would call programs on TV to tell them what we're doing, and they should spread the word. Jose has said what I was going to say. I think that it is important that all these things that you've been doing for years, that you should tell the story. This should be known, should be made public. People outside, those of us in the media, etc., so that you can disseminate these stories, so you can spread the word. In Twitter, I look for many space devices that are surveying the space. It is just a small piece of iron. This human factor is important, however. And this will help you sell your stories much better, I think. Thank you. Thank you very much to you all. I think we've reached the end. We have gone beyond our time, actually. So I would like to give a title for this session. In these times of crisis and change, where many people that should be honest are being put into question, and everything is about going to court in this society, I believe that the most important value is that a dynamizer of a telecenter is an ethical as a person. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias por vuestras reflexiones.
Thank you very much for your comments. We're going to give a couple of minutes to change mics, etc., and get the stage ready for the next session with Guadalinfo. And the area in the first floor is open with the apps lab, hub zone, and instruments, etc. You can go there and do networking there. And please do not move from your seats, because we're going to start very soon. And please tweet a lot with the hashtag Spark13. We want to know your comments about how the conference is going. Thank you.